it's
Recaps. No recap on me.
okay. Let's call back to order. We've got another item that isn't on the agendas, but it's going to be out of the Fisheries Committee. I'd like to recognize Rusty Russ. He's got a presentation for us.
You can go ahead and start. It's right there. Just double click that when you're ready.
All right, thank you. All right, I've got a presentation that I'll just go ahead and start the tape running, and then, we can talk about it. You've got a few facts on where we went to Old Hickory for 3 days and caught fish out there and kind of did a comparison on them. But anyway, let me start running this tape, and then we can kind of go through some of this when it's over. Oh, I'm used to touchscreen. Hi, I'm Rusty Rust, professional tournament angler and co-host of Fishing Affliction TV. And today I'd like to take a little of your time and talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, the bass revitalization of Old Hickory Lake. In our previous presentation, you saw what a strong financial impact bass fishing has on the local communities on the lake. Old Hickory is a 75-mile body of water that comes from Cordell Hull at Carthage all the way down through Lebanon, Gallatin, Hendersonville, Mount Juliet, down to the dam at Hermitage. All these are vibrant, growing communities, and this is just some of the ones that are adjacent to the lake. It directly impacts Nashville, Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and some of the other communities that are close tied into the boundaries of Old Hickory Lake. As a tournament angler and talking with the weekend warriors, Old Hickory continues to be one of the toughest lakes in the state of Tennessee to catch bass out of. For whatever reason, you can come out here and spend days upon days and not get on a good pattern or a good school of fish, and it needs help. And that is why the Bass Boost Revitalization Stocking Program can do wonders to help Old Hickory Lake. Fishing Old Hickory for 40 years does not make me a biologist. So recently I brought in some biologists, and they came to Old Hickory and they collected data for several days. And the results of this data will show you why Old Hickory Lake is deserving of a restocking program.
Hi, I'm Robbie Mays.
And I'm Sean McNulty. We're with American Sportfish Hatchery out of Montgomery, Alabama. Today we're going to go out with Rusty Rust, check out some of the fish on this lake, take some fin clips, some weights, and links, get some relative weights to see how these fish are doing.
If I can get your hand, there you go, perfect. Okay. Sean, 15 inches, 1.38 pounds.
Putting it right over to where you need to.
All right, you want to throw him in the want to just throw him in there for the time being, and then I'll take all 5 of them over there.
Okay.
14 inches. 1.34 pounds.
Fish and get the otoliths out. How long would it take Auburn to?
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how old some of these fish are at this size.
15 a quarter.
15 and a quarter, yeah. 1.49.
It's a good shot, Carter.
15 and a half.
Now, that's a good looking bass.
Yeah, that's healthy. 2.16. 18 inches. 2.57.
2.57?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long fish right there. I mean, how long was that fish?
18 inches.
18.
And 2.57 for an 18-inch fish.
Not good. Right now we've got 10 fish that we weighed and measured. The smallest one is 14 inches up to 18 inches, and the heaviest one was 2.57 pounds. Right now they look small and skinny. We had one bass that looked pretty healthy, but other than that it was pretty slim pickings. You know, the two most important things for growing big bass are good genetics and forage. If they have plenty to eat and it's not a stunted population, then you will get big bass.
How much does the lake environment play a part of the size of the bass?
It's important, but it drives more the reproduction of the forage fish than it does the bass. Again, it goes back to if your lake has enough for the bass to eat, then the bass will grow.
As far as any type of aquatic vegetation, that's a plus if it exists?
I think it is. If you look at Gunnersville, if you look, there's lakes in Arkansas, when the vegetation is up, the bass fishing is up. And they're fighting that everywhere between different lakes as far as, you know, trying to keep the weeds down for aesthetic reasons and power generation reasons, and contrasting that with the fishing. So I think vegetation definitely helps, but it's definitely a battle that fishermen and regulators fight.
Robbie, tell us a little bit about how the study will be done with the clippings of the fins.
Well, basically we'll send them off to Auburn University and they'll run genetic analysis on the fin clips. They'll be able to tell generally what strain of bass they are, northern strain, Florida strain, or a cross between the two, or some kind of mixture of the two. And from that data we'll be able to just tell, you know, kind of a little bit of the history on where the fish have come from, and sort of the aggressiveness. That'll tell us a little bit about how aggressive the fish are and their growth capability. You know, when we're dealing with straight Florida bass, we know their growth rates are good. Their maximum size can be very large, and we know that with a northern bass, those fish are more aggressive. And so, like when we produce our F1 cross, the tiger bass, what we're trying to do is combine the best of both worlds, the growth capability along with the aggressive nature of the fish.
Let me ask you too how we're going to determine the age of these fish.
What we'll do is we'll remove one of the otoliths of the fish, one or both of the otoliths. That's a small bone that's inside their head, and so we have to sacrifice the fish. We'll be able to cut that otolith in a cross section and count the rings on it, and basically that'll tell us how old that fish is, and we can look at the size of the fish that it came from, and that'll tell us what kind of growth rate we're seeing there. If it's a small fish in length and it's a very old fish, we know they're not growing very well.
Being able to catch a limit of bass has improved or not improved?
Well, you know, we shoot shows almost every week, and we have been for, I guess, Fish and Affliction shot close to 260 shows. I was on another show before this, shot probably 200 shows there. And the hardest show to get is the show that's in my back door, Old Hickory. Springtime of the year, you can come out here where every fish is up on the bushes, and you can shoot a decent show. Maybe get anywhere from 16 to 18 pounds on film, you know, maybe catch 10 or 12 keepers that day. And but it doesn't compare to Kentucky Lake, Gunnersville, Wheeler, even Priest. I fished out there 2 weeks ago, had 3 fish close to 5. Sunday I had, in a major cold front, I had 2 close to 5. I probably had 25 fish the second day, 20 the first day. I mean, it's a fun day, and it's a way shorter lake. You know, has more pressure than over here. The fish are just stockier, they're healthier, and I'm not seeing any more bait over there than what I see over here. I'm just not, the fish are just, different. And that's why I requested these guys come down. I wanted to get their opinion, try to figure out what's going on with this.
You'll try the other one.
DVD.
I'm going to see if it just shut off.
I don't know.
You know more about it than I do. We can bump it up to there. All these fish I'm catching in around where they're, because every other lake, I shot a show on Kentucky Lake, and we had comparing this lake to what it's doing, you know, when I come over here. But I'm also fishing other lakes at the same time that I'm catching fish on. We caught enough fish that we actually end up getting a show 1 and a show 2 out of that deal, and probably could have turned it into 3 shows. And but it's just you know, I fished all day yesterday. I had 3 keeper bites. The guy with me had 2 keeper bites, with us fishing as hard as we could. And I mean, it's just tough over here. And it's just, you know, I mean, it's gotten to the point where, you know, something's got to be done. If we, you know, if you don't want to stock Floridas, we need to stock Northerns. But we need to stop, because these people are better at catching fish. There's more population hitting this area. There's more people fishing this lake, and you know, it needs help. You know, he's run the biggest tournaments, the Bassmasters, anybody, BFL, any of the major guys. They're usually out of this dock. Right. So he sees the major weigh-ins, and he sees the, you know, good, bad, and ugly. You know, he'll see good weights at different times, but I mean, he can tell you, I'm not gonna stick words in his mouth, but he can tell you kind of what he's seeing in weights, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, back in the 90s, you know, when we had the grass, of course, you know, numbers and quality and all that, you know, got extremely good out here. And then after they killed the grass off, the quality continued to, you know, to get better up to a point. And then last 10, 12, 15 years, it's declined big time. We had, you know, 5 and 6 fish stringers, you know, back in the 90s that, you know, were in excess of 30 pounds. And if you see a 20-pound string out here today, it's, there's just not many of them. There's just not many of them. Most of the winning strings around here right now are running 15 to 17 pounds.
So it's both size and quantity. There's not a lot of fish to be caught.
Not a lot of fish to be caught. We're not seeing, you know, we're on a 5-fish limit, and you don't see a lot of limits come in anymore. You'll see on a 50-boat tournament, you'll see 6, 7 limits of fish. and occasionally you'll see a fish over 6 pounds, but not many. Which is, the fishing's hurting out here, and it seems to all relate back, of course, to the grass, and they just, like I say, the fish just aren't healthy here.
But now the lake weed in the last couple of years has they really come on pretty good.
It's probably better right now than it's ever been. I've lived here all my life. In fact, I was born on Station Camp Creek down here, and fished this lake ever since it was, I was old enough to fish. And yeah, the riverweed's good. Rivergrass is good. It's growing a little bit deeper. It's growing, healthier, more places, more. You can fish it. It's become major. Major place for the fish. But even that, it's not enough. Most of it's too shallow.
So, one of the things that we see, we stock a lot of private ponds, but we also stock a lot of, public waters. And fish stocking gets people more excited than just about anything we do. They get to see fish going in the water. They relate that to better, catch rates and everything. So, it's good public relations for agencies. And, we've got private groups that raise money to stock these ponds because everybody loves to see fish going in the lake, and so it's really the best money you can spend on, turning a lake around.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, like on Loudon Lake this year, I heard from a lot of those guys when they stocked Loudon this year with the Floridas. I mean, they're ecstatic, man, because that lake needed help as bad as this one does.
All right, we stocked another. It's a public lake in Virginia, but again, it was the bass fishing groups that got together. They raised some money through tournaments to start stocking tiger bass. Just trying to turn that fishery around. So it's spreading because it works, but it's also a good PR move for everybody involved. Well, it's early on. We obviously don't have the experience that Rusty has on this lake, but just talking to him and some other fishermen, the fish are small and they're also hard to find. So we manage over 2,000 acres of water in the southeast, and it's very rare that we see small bass and few bass. It's usually the other way around. If there's not a lot of bass in there, then there's a lot of food for the ones that are in there, and so you tend to get few bass, but they're bigger. And so just talking on the way over here, Robbie and I discussed that there might be an issue with survival in a recruitment class. In other words, the bass are spawning, but those young of the year are not making it to adult. And there's hundreds of reasons that could cause that, but the simple solution is a stocking program. We would stock a 2-inch bass, and the survival on that 2-inch bass is, it's a lot higher than stocking fry or even obviously what the natural population is giving. And in addition, being in Montgomery, Alabama, we're a little ahead on spawning. We even bring our fish in early, warm them up quickly so that we can get to 2 inches, which is our normal stocking size, quicker. So when we stock that in the lake, like we've done in Virginia, the bass that we're stocking are actually bigger than the natural population, so they have an advantage. So your survival and growth is even better. American sport fish, we've been stocking tiger bass, and what that is, it is a cross between a Florida female, which is going to be your trophy bass, and a northern male. And so the Florida bass, those are the trophy fish. They're in the double digits, but the problem with a pure Florida is a lot of times they're a little bit finicky taking artificial lures as they get bigger. And so they are crossed with a northern bass, which tops out at 8 or 9 pounds, but are extremely aggressive. So when you do that, you get a fish that's going to easily get in the double digits, but is very aggressive. This is Sean McNulty with American Sport Fish, and we're following up on the results with the fish that we collected from Old Hickory with Rusty Rust. We looked at 3 different things. We looked at the genetics, we looked at the size, and we looked at the age of the fish. On the genetics, we saw what we expected, which is typical for a northern bass in the Tennessee area, in which 90% of the markers that they test for are northern bass, with 8 to 10% being Florida bass. And that doesn't mean that Florida bass have ever been stocked in the area. It just simply means that the further south you move, you get a little bit of overlap of genes between the northern and the Florida strains. So what we call an Old Hickory is a typical Tennessee northern bass. On the size, we caught 14 fish. All but one fish was undersized based on relative weight, which is a comparison of length and weight. The average was 84. In a standard fish, the average rate, or the average relative weight, would be 100. So these fish are extremely skinny. The third thing that we saw was the age. In our sample, we caught 2 and 3-year-old fish. You know, the length in the inches was typical for something you would see, but again, they were all skinnier than they should have been. And you can look at that again, looking at the relative weight.
To reiterate these biological findings, the fish on Old Hickory we caught were underweight, and for their size, some of them varied even a ½ pound off what a normal northern should weigh, especially at this time of year where they should be feeding up for the winter. And additionally, the fish that were checked were northerns, but they weren't a pure northern. Every one of them had Florida genetics in them, which is commonplace for a Tennessee waterway. So what can we do about this? We as the anglers want to work with TWRA to come up with the best fishery we can come up with. We have got agreements in place to provide $38,000 in funding for the first year stocking of the tigers. We feel that this will make the biggest impact on the fishery and the quickest impact on the fishery. I believe working together we can make this one of the best fisheries in the nation and be a great marketing tool for the city of Nashville, and absolutely a great place for our future generations to fish. I'm Rusty Rust. I appreciate you watching this presentation. God bless you and your family. And on your handout, if you look, there's a, they were talking about the lake in that they've stocked, and it talks about, you know, the guy sends in some information that over 50% of the fish after 3 years are showing up with the tiger bass genetics. And this river that they stock there is not in the south part of Virginia, but up towards the north part of Virginia, way farther north parallel than where we're at. And it actually goes into a tidal river. So it's a tough river to stock anyway with its, you know, the way it's going to hold grass or it's going to hold vegetation, but they've had a really good rate of, you know, stocking there. So, but we ended up catching 14 fish. It took us, I took the biologist out, and we had 25 hours in catching 14 keepers. To tell you how other lakes are going, I shot a show the day before I went down there on Kentucky Lake. The second point I pulled on, we caught 18 keepers and had a show in 30 minutes. I mean, there's schools in Kentucky Lake that are, you know, you'll pull in there 50, 60 fish in a school. I've caught as many as 100 bass in a day on the lake, and you just don't see that on Old Hickory. I mean, I've got guys out there, and you know, I can bring them in at a different time, but you know, we were kind of pressed for time today. But these guys on the electronics now are unreal. If you take these scanners that are, you can scan 100 feet out both sides of your boat, you can absolutely see a school of bass going down the lake. Mickey Beck is probably one of the best guys I've ever seen. He has 4 different graphs in his boat, 2 on his console, 1 in his floor. this guy can tell you the size, what they are. He won 2 or 3 tournaments in a row on Old Hickory last year. While we were at the Triton Owners Tournament, he grabbed 35 different schools on Kentucky Lake. Most these, you can count them. You can sit there and count the fish. There'll be 30, 40, 50 fish in the school. If you go down the 30-mile stretch of the dam from Flippers and a little bit above that, if you find 4 or 5 decent schools, you're doing exceptional. Now, you know, I know, you know, in talking with Todd, he says, well, we're seeing them when we're shocking. Well, I don't know if they're smaller or if they've just been tuned to where they're not feeding like they should, but if you see the fish you catch out there, these fish look like an upside down cone you see on the end of the interstate. They're all head and their body just tapers down to nothing. Where especially now, usually they're feeding up on shad, and there's shad all over this lake. There's creeks on this lake. You can walk across the shad in the back of them. And I mean, it's just tough out there, and it needs help. And we're willing to, you know, we try to look at every option as far as you guys. Well, we don't want to stretch our budget doing this. So we were, you know, we thought about just having a release program that was part of a tournament to where we could hand out so many of the fry as they went out in the tournament, and they had, part of the tournament was they had to go and release them up against the bank. We had a short meeting in front of that to explain to them how they need to be released, and you know, so that would eliminate, you know, anybody having to take them out or drive trucks around or man hours for that. So we tried to look at every aspect as far as keeping, you know, keeping it to where it would be as economically feasible, you know, to do the stocking. But anyway, I mean, it's pretty evident what I'm wanting to try to have happen here. And the other thing I want to do is commend you all. You would not believe the guys on Loudon and some of these lakes where the TWRA stocked last year, how enthused these guys are. And I know you all seen a bunch of the news articles and things like that. I mean, it really went over well.
Thank you, Russ. Just a few comments. I'm a little disappointed. When I talked to you and told you to get you on the agenda, I thought we was going to be watching a video for how to keep fish alive at tournaments and not a commercial for American sport fish. But your biological survey was with 14 fish. Our agency done won a shopping program with 500 fish. And we come up with the same genetics, 90% northern. Our relative weight was in the upper 90 percentile. And your biologist said that they were at the correct length for the age, and ours did too. So we agree on those things. We actually come up with a larger, more accurate survey, and our relative weight was in the upper 90 percentiles. And then our creel clerks have done several, well, every year they do surveys on the lake. And it's one of the higher catch rate lakes in the state. So it's just, you know, in my personal opinion, and this is my personal opinion, I'm not speaking for any of the commission, the people of Tennessee are blessed to have 2 river systems running from east to west in this state. You've got the Tennessee, the warmer southern part. You got the Cumberland, the upper, cooler northern part. Granted, the northern part, a little tougher fishing. I fish Dale Hollow. It's a little tougher fishing than going to Chickamauga. But the people of the state have got a choice. They can go fish for northern fish, or they can go fish for Florida strain fish. I mean, if you put Florida strain or F1 in that Cumberland River system, there's no getting them out. We've got it all over the state, and the genetics are all over the state. So I just think the people of Tennessee right now are fortunate, and this is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody else here, but my personal opinion, the people in the state of Tennessee are fortunate to have a choice where they want to go fishing. Any other questions from the commission? Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Do you mind if I take a second and answer what you were saying there? I was at Lowe's a week ago, and two of these gentlemen that were in their 70s came up to me, and they told me, Rusty, we appreciate what you're trying to do, because we don't have the money to travel, you know, like a lot of people do. These are retirees, and they're fishing on Old Hickory, and they'll go out there on a daily basis and maybe catch 8 or 10 pounds of fish on a good day. Now, I don't know how much you fished Old Hickory, or anybody on this has fished it, but I've fished it a lot, and it is, I mean, you can say it's great or whatever, but until somebody's out there looking at the tournaments and seeing what's actually coming in, and we don't have that in place, and we want to work with Tennessee Wildlife and get something in place to where we got to where they can see what's going on. Because, I mean, you go to, and you're right, I mean, I've got a choice because I can afford to do it. But if you're like these kids that are on these high school teams that are local, that are fishing Priest or Old Hickory, like the Smyrna Bulldogs, or that's not a case. They're fishing one lake or the other, and there's the Boy Scout camp, the Girl Scout camp. There's all these youth camps on the lake that you take a kid out there, and the first thing he does is spend 5 hours on the lake and doesn't catch a fish. I mean, that's not going to make him where he's ready to continue in the outdoors. So anyway, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Government Relations Committee, Chairman Jamie Woodson.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Right here?
Yes, state your name, please.
My name is Scott Morris. I'm from Franklin, Tennessee, lived in Mount Juliet for 14 years, native of Tennessee and Franklin. Appreciate you guys today. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I've been working with, where's Bobby? I've been working with Bobby, golly, how many years now? 7 or 8 years, and kind of just thought, hey, I want to protect tournament bass fishing. So Bobby and I have become very good friends, and my whole thing with the Florida bass, Rusty, he and I really worked hard to try to get the stocking of Florida bass in the state of Tennessee, and we appreciate Bobby's team deciding to stock the Tennessee River, and I really believe if it wasn't for Rusty and us really working together, we wouldn't have the Fort Loudon guys, you know, being happy and stuff like that. So the situation with Old Hickory is a very interesting situation. I come from it from a standpoint of money, and basically when I met with the city of Mount Juliet, my whole thing was bass equals money. And the state of Tennessee does a very poor job of marketing bass versus the state of Alabama versus the state of really Kentucky now. With Old Hickory, the opportunity would be to take that lake and develop a lake that produces gigantic bass. You produce big bass, the tournaments come in, and everybody makes a lot of money. You take that money and you fund the agency. So that would be my standpoint on bass fishing. And I don't understand why there's not more emphasis on bass fishing in the state of Tennessee when it is the #1 economic impact funding everything. And I know you guys realize that. So I'm very passionate about Old Hickory Lake. I've lived on it for several years. It's a fantastic lake. There's a silt problem with that lake. I still think there's some stuff going on with the steam plant of it, stuff leaking out, ash and stuff like that. But the bottom line is exactly right. The fish are not there like they used to be. So I think with this program, you would have an opportunity to produce big fish and to bring in money for the state. Now, also back several years ago, we brought up the point of having a how do we fund this? Well, my idea was basically have a bass stamp. Take that money and use it for bass fishing, and then maybe take 5% of it and put it in the general fund and use it for stuff that you guys need. So that's something that we definitely could explore. My point is this, is with the connections that we have and very good relationships throughout the whole state of Tennessee. If we ever did do a bass stamp, we could get the buy-in from the fishermen. So I want you guys to know that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.